Hi everyone, this is Nick Pollock here from Roar Lions Roar. While you're here, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert bell so you never miss any of our new content. And if you prefer to listen instead of watch, make sure you check us out on your podcast platform of choice where you can subscribe and download each new episode. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Go State! Hello everybody and welcome back to Roar Lions Roar for the first time hosting in, 7 months, 8 months. This is Nick Pollock back here tonight with my co-host Matt Filipovitz. Matt, how are we doing tonight?
Nick, do you have an air
I
fryer?
do have an air fryer.
What are your thoughts on it? We've been using
I love it.
a lot more often lately because it's not heating up the little apartment as much as the oven is. And I think I only air fry things from now on. I think that's my new personality
Yeah,
trait.
it's first very original personality trait. Good for you.
Mhm.
But yeah, we love the air fryer.
I'm a dude in my 20s and I like college football and air frying stuff. Who would have guessed?
We love the air fryer. We use it constantly. It's a very helpful tool. It's like, I mean, honestly, I think the biggest selling point for an air fryer is that it makes a way to like reheat fries tenable. Like that's a big deal.
Okay. Mine's an all-in-one. It's an air fryer, it's a crock pot,
Oh,
it's a pressure cooker. Um, it's the size of my like two of my heads, and I have a really big head. We've had to move it to an easier storage location, so I'm not having to like huck it up on my little step stool every time I want to put it away. So it's becoming a much bigger part of my life than I expected.
goodness. I didn't realize I knew they made air fryers that were combination things. I didn't realize they made all that in one. This is great podcasting. Let's talk about Penn State football. Matt, we are here tonight to continue our preview series for the 2023 Penn State football season. And tonight we are here to talk about the wide receivers. So before we get into
Should be an easy one, no
yeah,
questions
no
here.
questions at all. Before we get into what to expect this year, we're going to do a quick recap of last season because it was an interesting year for the Penn State receivers. I'll just rattle off the leaders from last year real quick for you. Parker Washington, 46 receptions for 611 yards, only 2 touchdowns last year for Parker. Mitchell Tinsley, 51 receptions, 577 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Keandre Lambert-Smith, 24 receptions, 389 yards, 5 touchdowns. Trey Wallace, 19 receptions, 362 yards, 1 touchdown. And then Brenton Strange and Theo Johnson were both over 20 catches each and over 320 yards each with over 4 touchdowns each. So really good year for the tight ends in that regard. And then other wide receivers with receptions last year were Amari Evans with 5, Liam Clifford with 8, Malik Mega with 3, Caden Saunders with 2, and Jaden Dotton with 2. So I think the first question here, Matt, is how much is this Penn State offense going to miss Mitchell Tinsley and Parker Washington?
And Jaden Dotton.
And Jaden
I'll get that
Dotton.
in there.
Excuse me.
Real quick, I am floored, Nick, because I also wrote down notes ahead of time, which never happens for both of us to have this done. I had those numbers available as well. I think it's going to be a guy always steps up, but this feels like a big deal. Like losing Parker Washington, I really thought they were going to get him back for another year. I don't know if the injury kind of sped up his timeline. I know he has family in the NFL. Maybe he had a better idea of, what realistically that contract could look like depending on when he was drafted. But they're going to miss Parker Washington a lot. Like his production, his consistency, him being a great security blanket for Sean Clifford for a very long time. Like even as a true freshman, once Freiermuth got hurt, it was clearly, try to get the ball to Jahan Dotson, but the safe route was always the Parker Washington route. Right. So that's a guy I think they're really going to miss. And then Tinsley is like the first, you think it's fair to say he's the first offensive transfer to like really hit? You could say it was Eric Wilson, but like Tinsley, I think definitely hit at a higher rate than Wilson did in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just partially by proxy of the positions they play, but yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. The good news about Tinsley is you knew he was a 1 year guy. You knew you're going into taking him as a transfer for 1 year. He was a very reliable target. He became that great second, third option for Sean Clifford. And I really like Keandre Lambert-Smith. I love that. I think it's like 53% of his production came in those final 2 games. I think that's a really good thing to build off of. And if you remember, Parker Washington was out for those games. So the opportunity was there to produce, and for the first time in his career, really, Lambert Smith answered the bell, and I love to see that. But they're gonna miss Washington. They're gonna miss Tinsley. They have a lot of bites at the apple, but I don't love the fact that there's no sure thing out wide. Like there's a sure thing at tight end, there's a sure thing at running back, but there's not a sure thing out wide for Drew Aller or Bo Prabula or whoever takes a lot of snaps for Penn State at quarterback this fall.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not so much that they're going to not be able to replicate what those two gave them on the field last year because, in the grand scheme, it's not like either of them blew the doors off when it comes to actual production on the
No,
field.
nobody was Jahan.
Yeah, there was no Jahan Dotson, there was no KJ Hamler, like there was no like that's the
Hmm.
dude kind of guy. But I think the point that you brought up about Parker Washington being such a good security blanket is a really valid one because that's exactly what he is. He's just so good at getting open, and he has such sure hands that he's such a safe target. Like normally you think of like tight ends as being like the safe target just because they're such big bodies. It's easy for them to get open and kind of throw it up their way. But that's what Parker Washington was. Like you could throw him the
Hmm.
ball pretty much in any scenario, and you knew he had a pretty good chance of going up and getting it. So he's exactly the kind of player that I would have absolutely loved for Drew Aller to have by his side in his first year as a starter. And it's like from a Penn State perspective, it's a bummer he's not back. Not at all knocking his decision to go. Like, get your money when you can. Like,
Get
absolutely,
your money.
absolutely the right decision for him. If he thought it was the right
Hmm.
time, fully support that. That's awesome for him. Glad he got paid. Um, but yeah, I think it's going to be a big loss for Penn State. Like Mitchell Tinsley, obviously was a great player. I don't think what he did is as difficult to replicate. Like I feel pretty confident in whoever between Keandre Lambert Smith, Trey Wallace, Dante Cephas, Mari Evans, whoever ends up playing like that Mitchell Tinsley role, I feel fine with them being able to replace him. But yeah, losing Parker
Hmm.
Washington's tough. He was an awesome,
Yeah,
awesome Nittany Lion, and um, it's gonna be a little sad not to see him out there this fall.
he was one of my favorite receivers, like of all time. He's probably top five Penn State receiver for me. He was such a fluid athlete. He's going to do great things for Doug Peterson and the Jaguars. I'm telling all my friends to draft Parker Washington like late in their fantasy drafts, like especially in keeper leagues. He'll be a value guy.
Yeah, he's built to survive. He's built like a running back. Like he can take
Hmm.
hits, he can break tackles. Like he's gonna be around for the long haul as long as he gets a chance. He's gonna be around for a
Hmm.
while. Um,
Yeah, he'll produce.
so moving on to this year, then Matt, it seems like we have a pretty good idea of who the four guys are competing for three, typically three starting receiver spots. We know Penn State pulls out a
Hmm.
bunch of different formations, but who are you expecting to see? Let's say the first set has three guys. Who are you expecting to see out there?
Okay, so I want to make sure I caveat this. There's two no doubt starters: Keandre Lambert Smith and Harrison Trey Wallace. The third one, I think, against West Virginia at least, is going to be Amari
Hmm.
Evans. I think that familiarity with the system, I think Cephas not getting in for spring, maybe put him behind the eight ball a little bit. But I think maybe after the bye, it'll be pretty even. So like starter won't really mean all that much. I think it could be pretty even by like game three already. But I think first snap against West Virginia, I think it's Keandre. If it's not 12 personnel, I think it's Keandre Lambert Smith, Trey Wallace, and Amari Evans. I think Evans came on really strong. The converted quarterback who had to learn the position. I think he's being coached by Marcus Hagans, a very good tactician at that position. And I just think that those three guys give Drew Aller the best shot. I think Trey Wallace on the outside, Amari Evans on the outside, and KLS in the slot gives him options to push the ball downfield and opportunities to get playmakers the ball in space in those intermediate and short routes between his tight ends and between Keandre Lambert Smith in the slot. So that's where I'm going to plant my flag for right now. I think it might just be in name only. I wouldn't be surprised if guys like Cephas, Liam Clifford, Caden Saunders come up and take a lot of reps. But game one, those are my three.
So let's take this opportunity to talk
Where
about
do you
Dante
fall?
Cephas, actually, the
Yeah.
Kent State transfer. So Dante Cephas, As most of you who have been listening to the podcast, following along, he was really the name on top of Penn State's wide receiver transfer board pretty much from the moment the season ended. They eventually were able to seal the deal with him, and for good reason. 2021, Dante Cephas, 82 receptions, 1,240 yards, 9 touchdowns in 14 games that season. In 2022, only played 9 games, still racked up 48 receptions, 744 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He was a first team All Mac selection both years. Right now on the Go PSU, listed at 6 foot 187. Expected to, as we've alluded to, at least fight for a starting spot, if not win one outright. But at the very least,
Mhm.
we expect him to be a significant part of the two deep for Penn State. It's interesting in that when we talk about who the starters are going to be, we talked about this a bit when we did our hypothetical trade proposals. Penn State doesn't have the bona fide X receiver type guy. Harrison Wallace is probably going to be the one that fills that role. I think Cephas,
He's the
yeah,
closest thing.
I think Cephas
Yeah.
could be that guy, even though he's not quite as big as you would want from that position. That
Mhm.
like having the guy you can just throw it up to on the sidelines. And we know Harrison Wallace is an incredible athlete, and he could probably make up for a little bit of the lack of height with his ability to just get up.
Mhm.
But the interesting thing about the Penn State receivers room is they don't have that guy, but they have several guys who look like they can really fluidly swap around to any of those receiver spots, especially just bouncing between inside and outside. We know Keandre Lambert-Smith can play inside and outside. We've seen Trey Wallace play a little bit of the slot. We've seen Amari Evans play a little bit of the slot. Cephas seems like he can do the same thing. We know, as we'll
Mhm.
talk about the backups in a bit, but we know Liam Clifford can do that same thing. We'll see what we get from Caden Saunders this year and Malik McLean. But if you're asking me gun to my head, I think I agree that it's going to be Lambert-Smith, Trey Wallace, and Amari Evans. Part of that is biased because I've been super high on Amari Evans since before last season. I love converted quarterbacks, especially when they play wide receiver. But
The lack of production for a guy who burned his red shirt like blows my
yeah,
mind. Like only 5 catches with I think multiple of them coming against Ohio. Like I really do wonder if it was it they knew they needed a little bit of extra help. They knew they were going to lose Tinsley. They knew there was a shot they'd lose Strange and Parker and all that kind of fun stuff. I wonder if that was just a year to get him comfortable with game reps ahead of his breakout. Like I can't name the last guy to burn a red shirt and then not really like produce like that. So I think the staff knows something that we just haven't seen yet. And that doesn't mean we can't see it early, but Evans is, he's the most intriguing name in this room to me right now.
yeah. To me, I kind of see it as like think most of his time did come with Drew Aller on the field, right? I think
Hmm.
it's I think the staff was probably doing what they could to get Aller time with guys that he could feasibly throwing the ball to in the future, and I wonder if that played into part of it. But the
I'm
the
sure
other
it
thing
did.
is that Drew Aller has a massive arm, and Amari Evans is probably the fastest receiver on the roster. Like he's probably the
Yeah.
guy they're going to on deep balls, on pump and goes, and stuff like that. We know Penn State loves to run. So I it was a little odd. I agree to see him burn the red shirt and them only kind of use him, but at the same time, he's probably not somebody who's going to. I mean, I would be happily
Be
proved
here
wrong.
5 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would happily be proved wrong here, but he's probably not someone who's going to go for 900, 1,000 yards in a season at any point, most likely.
Hmm.
So even though you burn the red shirt early, I think you probably still feel pretty confident you're going to get 3 more seasons out of him. So I think that plays a role in it as
Hmm.
well. Um, but yeah, I love the potential of what Amari Evans could be in this offense.
Yeah. I think he's the most intriguing
Yeah,
guy.
for sure. Um, Matt, what else is intriguing?
No, I don't. I don't know. I don't have the rundown in front of me. I don't know what's next, but I think I
The
know.
new items that Homefield released not too long ago that were had all these new Penn State designs on them. Have you seen them?
Those were the I have seen them. I own a few of them. I own the joggers. It's been cold here
Mm.
lately. Like it's been like high 60s, low 70s, which, listen, that's not cold at all. But for like August, I was surprised by like how quickly it dropped, because it was like 90s for like a week straight. And then it dropped down. And there was a little bit of that fall crispness in the air. So I'm excited for that to come back. It's going to warm back up. And I'm excited to wear my joggers from Home Field Apparel.
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast, you know about Home Field Player. Oh my goodness, Craig Fritz seems to have hopped in here for a moment.
Craig, hello.
Was I not supposed to?
No, not yet, but you're okay. You can listen to the Home Field ad. We're recording the another episode, but you're free to listen in for a second. We are. This is great live podcasting right here. You know about
We're not editing.
you
this
know
out.
about Home
This is
Field Apparel.
hilarious.
They're the premium college apparel brand based in Indianapolis, where Big Ten dreams are made. At least for now, they are. At least for now. That might change with the new whole conference realignment here. Who knows?
Oh, bye, Craig.
But you've seen the designs. You know what they do. You know how hard they work to find vintage designs that mean something to you and your school. They dig through the yearbooks. They do the heavy lifting that most apparel brands simply don't do. And you don't just have to buy Penn State stuff. We would prefer you do. They have great Penn State stuff. We would prefer you rock our school stuff, but they have over 150 schools to look from. Like, you can get random shirts from Stony Brook and Toledo and UCLA, like whatever you want. Maybe even
Kent State dropping this week. Former home of Dante.
there you go. Even new Big Ten members, Oregon and Washington. Washington stuff is actually very cool. I've seen a lot of that stuff. It's very awesome. So if you are so inclined to join us in our journeys to ever improve our wardrobes, go ahead and visit homefieldapparel.com, and you can get set up for the new football season. If you order that stuff now, it should come in time. And we have a special deal for you, because if you sign up with a new email account on the website and type in that code RLR23, all caps, all one word, we can get you 15% off of your first order. And there's no limitations on that. You could order 100 shirts if you want to. You're still getting 15% off. It's a great deal. Take advantage of it. Home Field have been exceptional friends of the podcast, wonderful sponsors. We love working with them. So make sure you use that code RLR23 at checkout for 15% off of your very first order. Matthew.
Nick, that was our most professional and at the same time most chaotic ad we've ever done. I love it. That was the duality of man.
I really loved every single second of it. Let's talk backup receivers, because we talked about this on the quarterback pod. Backup quarterback's always the most popular player on the roster, but I think backup receivers often promote the most intrigue, because they're typically receivers in a class are typically the most athletic dudes you bring in, because it's just you run such a gauntlet of the types of things that receivers can do in high school and college and beyond. But that's really just where like so many of the elite athletes funnel, and it's kind of just like take him as a receiver, figure out what he's going to be elsewhere. So you have guys like Amari Evans, who you played quarterback in high school, and now you just get him in college and say, let's figure it out from there. So there's lots of times really interesting guys in that wide receiver depth chart, and this year is no exception to that. Are there any names that really stand out to you as guys that you think are going to be on the 2 deep or on the 3 deep, challenging for the 2 deep this year?
Yeah, so there's 3 guys. So we'll come out, I think, to a total of 7 receivers. So a true 2 deep plus 1, I think, are the realistic contributors at the position. So, like I said, the starters are, right now, for me, Lambert Smith, Trey Wallace, and Amari Evans. Dante Cephas, starter plus, we'll call it. The backups, I think the big 3 are going to be Liam Clifford, Sean's little brother, who I think showed a pretty good rapport with Drew Aller in that limited action we saw him in last year. I think he showed good hands. He set all kinds of records in Cincinnati high school football, which is good football. I'm really intrigued what he can do in the slot. Similarly, slot guy Caden Saunders. I really respect Caden Saunders for just being as honest as he was, for just saying, hey, listen, I got here as a true freshman. I got here early and I was not ready. Like, that's big for a kid to understand. I did not get on the field, and it was probably mostly my fault. Like,
especially for somebody with the recruiting chops that he had.
Yeah. Top, 90 prospect? Yeah. Like, for that kid to just say, listen, I was not ready yet, I think shows a lot of maturity, and that's a kid I'm really rooting for. And I think we're going to see Caden Saunders make some plays. Will he be the guy to moss a defensive back and catch a game-winning fade? Probably not. That's not what he does. But can he give them, 30 catches? I don't think that's unrealistic. I think maybe he can be a guy who becomes a good security blanket for Drew Aller when guys need a breather. And then the last guy I want to call out, I think is a pretty big wild card, but I think he is the guy who's going to moss a defensive back. And for as much as I like Mike Yurcich, I hate goal line fades, but he calls a lot of goal line fades. And that's where I think Malik McClain comes in, the Florida State transfer. 6'4", scored 3 touchdowns last year in the red zone mossing dudes. He's a big athletic football player. I think he's a guy who is built like no one else in this receiver room, aside from Malik Mega, who I think is still developing. Like, he played in Canada for forever. It's going to take some time with him. So that's why I think these 3 guys are really intriguing. I think with Lambert Smith's position flexibility, you can get Clifford and Saunders a lot of reps in the slot while keeping probably your best receiver and Lambert Smith on the field. And then I just think Malik McClain gives you another option out wide against a smaller corner to go up and get it. And like, when's the last time, Nick, we had a go up and get it kind of guy, like of that build? Jahan was go up and get it kind of guy, but he was always a little bit smaller. Probably Jawan Johnson was the last one we had on this roster.
I guess, but even then, like, the Juwan Johnson highlight is the one-hander against Ohio State, but it wasn't really like
Mm-hmm.
they didn't really put him in that many situations. Like, for me, I'm still waiting for someone to do it the way that Allen Robinson did it. Not saying that there's
Mm-hmm.
going to be another Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson was a
No.
special, special talent, but they haven't had
Mm-hmm.
somebody fill the role quite in the style that A-Rob did.
Yeah, and I think McClain can be that. What does that? Does that mean he caught 17 balls last year? Does that mean he matches that? Probably around there, I think is a fair expectation. But if he can go out there and if he can make that contested catch, I mean, the goal line fades aren't going away with Drew Aller. Like, let's be honest. So they need guys to go up there and make those catches, and McClain, I think, is a front runner to fill that role.
Yeah, I think the analogy I come back to McLean is that it's kind of like Chop Robinson. Like, they're bringing in a
Mm-hmm.
player at a premier position that they know has a lot of talent and could have very easily stayed where they were and done very well for themselves. But they're
Mm-hmm.
betting on the staff is betting on their ability to coax even more out of them. I don't
Mm-hmm.
expect McLean to pop the way that Chop Robinson did because Chop Robinson is one of the top defensive ends in football right now.
Right.
And I'm not even sure I expect McLean to get to 17 receptions. If like we ran down the list of last year, there were only, let's see, one, two, three, four receivers who were 19 receptions or more. And I think we're both in agreement that Penn State's going to run the football more this year. So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure if there's going to be as, like, you had Caden Saunders maybe at 30. I definitely don't see that happening. Um,
Yeah, I shouldn't have gone. I was thinking more like probably like 18, like 13 to
yeah,
18 kind of range
yeah.
probably is where I should fall.
But I very much agree. Like, Malik McClain is a fascinating name on this roster because he and Malik Mega, like you mentioned, they are the guys that have that size to be true X receivers. We'll see if we get there.
Hmm.
I know for me,
Hmm.
like, I really enjoy watching Liam Clifford play football. He's not flashy, but
He finds space, dude. It's
that
wild
dude's
how
got
much that dude just works to
hands.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he's gonna be the type of guy that, like, he finishes his fourth year or fifth year, whatever it is, and all of a sudden someone's like, "Hey, did you realize Liam Clifford didn't drop a ball while he was in college?" Like, something crazy like that. Like, he's seemed like a really safe option. I don't know if he's gonna do a whole lot statistically this year, but I would bet that the staff feels pretty comfortable in his ability to go out there and make plays for his quarterback. Um, but for me, it's got to be Caden Saunders is the name to watch from this group. Just all the
Hmm.
talent in the world. He's had, like you mentioned, he had that adjustment period, but he's had time to sit back and learn now. He's had time to digest the offense, get a feel for what it's like to be a college football player, learn how to juggle all that. I think he could be the true breakout of this group. Like, I think he could very
Hmm.
easily, like, honestly, I could see any outcome from him. I could see him be like the second leading receiver on the team. Like there's no outcome with him that would surprise me
Really?
this year. He's just I think he's the most purely talented receiver they have in the room. And
You might
I
be
love
right.
Amari Evans, and I have been huge on Keandre Lambert Smith from the second he got to campus. Like he was my Katron Allen before Katron Allen. Um, but Caden Saunders he's just a different beast athletically. He has so much speed. He has a really, really innate ability of understanding how to get open. Like I think he is going to be a really special football player for Penn State, and it could happen as soon as this year. He's probably
Mhm.
my favorite of this group if we're talking about sleepers. How about you?
Okay. Are you in the same boat with me where there's probably about a true 2 deep plus one?
I'd say that's fair.
I don't think like they don't really have the pure like one to one backup across the board, but I think they have 7 dudes who can just go out there and produce. And
Yeah.
then in terms of my sleeper, if this doesn't count as a sleeper, Nick, let me know. But I'm really high on Trey Wallace. I'm really high on this guy. I think the 3rd year bump I've always said is real.
Yeah.
I think for a former basketball player who's developed, who has found a way to get on the field, who has made big catches in big moments, like that ball that Clifford lofted to him against Michigan on like the last fun drive of that game was impressive route running and good
Yeah.
catching. He had a nice catch on a slant in the Rose Bowl where he showed really strong hands to put him, I want to say, at like the 9-yard line.
Yeah, it was right before
I
the
think he's the
Tinsley
kind of
touchdown.
yeah, I think he's the kind of guy who is going to thrive because attention is everywhere else. I think Lambert Smith's going to get a lot of attention, the running backs, the tight ends. I think he can kind of be the odd man out more often than not, and I think he can really produce. He's my pick right now, I'll be honest, to lead Penn State in receiving touchdowns from this receiver group.
I,
Because, Tinsley led it last year, but I think we could say Parker Washington was the number one
yeah.
receiver. I think we can say KOS is going to be the number one receiver, but Trey Wallace might lead the team in touchdowns just by nature of where they're going to come from. So if a starter counts as a sleeper, I'll take it. But I think that's a guy who's going to go out there and really produce and put together a good season.
Yeah, I think that I very much agree. I think relative to what people are probably expecting from him, absolutely he can be a sleeper because he, like you said, he very much seems like a guy who he hasn't necessarily like forced his way up the rotation early, but the kind of guy that once he's in the rotation, you're like, whoa, where's this been this whole time? Like he just seems like a dude that you just even if it maybe isn't all there exactly the way you'd like it to be at practice, he just seems like a dude that's going to be able to go make plays.
Which is what you
Yeah,
want. Like, you need playmakers in this offense because there's going to be the ability to grind out drives, to have those, I think, like 13 play drives. You need the guy who's going to set you up for 2 play drives. Like Mike Yursich at his press conference at Media Day said the most important stat in football is points per play. And with the new rules, there's fewer plays in a game. So you have to score more points in essentially fewer plays. And he's the kind of guy who's going to let you do that.
yeah, very much so. All in all, Matt, I think this is a really exciting receiver room for Penn State, even if it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily have the established talent that you would love to, or the established production that you would love to see
Mm-hmm.
with a new quarterback such as Drew Aller. But I think we can both agree that we are sky high on the potential of this group for sure.
All right, Nick, real quick, I'm gonna give you a
Okay,
rundown
hit
here. You
me.
ready? There are at time of recording, there are 14 teams in the Big Ten right now. I don't know if that's going to change. Is this the top 10 unit in the Big Ten, receiver wise? Top 10,
I mean, yeah.
top 8,
Yeah.
top 6.
Um, I feel like probably just I mean the Big Ten is not known for deep receiver cores. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
I sure I would not go top four.
Okay, so it's a top 5 unit in the Big Ten, receiving core wise. That's awesome.
I mean they might be
That's
six.
what we need. That's what. Yeah, they could be 6. Negligible at that point. I think they're going to produce. Like Bill made a point in a podcast a couple months back that Penn State has found ways to get unproven guys to produce. Like Deshaun Hamilton in 14, I think is the best example of
Yeah.
this. Like it feels like there's a lot of similarities between this team and that 2014 receiving core, which had was losing Allen Robinson and Brandon Mosby Felder, and replaced them with Deshaun Hamilton, Geno Lewis, Chris Godwin, Saeed Blacknall in 2014.
Yeah.
So it feels like there's guys who are going to produce and are going to become names that, even casual Penn State fans remember as like that guy made a couple plays. I think they could produce on a similar level as that.
So you're saying this roster is ripe with remember some dude names once we get like 20 years out from here.
Listen, remember some dudes, I think would be a very successful podcast, and I would not be surprised if there are some dudes for us to remember from this group.
Remember some dudes where nothing happens. We just bounce names back and forth with no commentary about them whatsoever. Just, hey, remember Derek Moy? And that's it. Just bouncing back and forth.
Shout out to Derek Moy.
All right, Matt. This has been great. Really excited for the Penn State receivers this year. We will be back tomorrow with our tight end preview, so make sure you are on the lookout for that. In the meantime, please make sure that you're subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as if you can head on over to YouTube, give us a follow, subscribe, click the alert bell, all that good stuff. You can see our faces say these words. It's wonderful. It's a beautiful confluence of words and video. You should really check it out. But if you have a chance, also leave us a 5-star review on Apple. Greatly appreciated as well. Leave us a question on there. We'll happily answer on the podcast, especially as we get closer to the season. I'm sure we'll have time to do some Q&As. And make sure you stay tuned to your podcast feed for the tomorrow's preview with the tight ends and all the other previews that come after it, because we still got to get through the whole defense too. And that's going to be super fun to talk about. So for myself, Nick Pollock, for my co-host, Matt Filipovitz, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Go State.